Hi, hello, it's Sugar. Welcome to my normal and heroic boss guide for Anduin Wrynn. This is a 3-phase encounter with 2 intermissions. The raid needs to be split into 2 groups for phases 1 and 2. Each group should contain a tank, healers, and some DPS. Hero can be used in either intermission because of the damage increase buff. Our goal in phases 1 and 2 is to restore Anduin's Force of Will. This grants the raid a damage increase and a reduced damage taken buff based on how much willpower is restored. It's very important to reach 100 because in the intermission, the raid will need this buff to survive. We do this by taking turns being hit by Kingsmourne Hungers. When hit, Lost Soul banishes players to a realm with Anduin's Despair, Hope, and Doubt for 35 seconds. When players return, they are debuffed with Scarred Soul, preventing them from going down again for 2 minutes. This is why we split the raid into 2 groups. Defeat the adds to restore Anduin's willpower. The raid only gets 2 cycles to fill up the bar. Each group can get a max of 60 willpower, so there's a little room for error here. The first group going down can be a little more DPS heavy to ensure that all 60 willpower is restored, meaning the second group would only need to get 40 willpower. Anduin's Despair is worth 20 willpower and needs to be tanked. Getting this ad down should be a top priority. This ad's Reign of Despair creates white swirlies that need to be avoided. If hit, they inflict shadow damage to players and reduce damage and healing done by 50% for 6 seconds. This ad should always be tanked near an Anduin's Doubt to help maximize DPS. Anduin's Doubts are worth 5 willpower each. These move in from the edges of the room. If they reach the center before they are DPS down, the raid will not receive credit for them. They are vulnerable to all forms of CC. Anduin's Hope is for the healers to focus and are worth 5 willpower each. In Heroic, they have a debuff called Gloom, reducing healing received by 100%. This must be dispelled before it can be healed to full. The intermission will begin whether or not Anduin reaches 100 willpower. Before we head there, let's look at the rest of Phase 1 mechanics. Many of these will show up in Phases 2 and 3. Befouled Barrier will be dropped near Anduin. Everyone should stack inside it, while healers quickly heal those inside to shrink the barrier. Removing the barrier, or shrinking it, reduces the healing absorbed put on the raid and the damage it does from exploding after 30 seconds. Blasphemy will assign all players with either a yellow or black debuff. 2 players with opposing marks must come into contact to neutralize the mechanic. If a player comes into contact with the same mark, it explodes, one-shotting anyone within 6 yards. This also applies if a player is unable to find an opposing mark before it expires. In Heroic, touching anyone without a mark will also cause this explosion. Wicked Star will mark players with a gray swirly-ish line and throw out a star at them that then flies back to Anduin. This can be handled in 2 ways. 1. Designate a side for players to go to and have them stand still there, or 2. Have the marked player back up a few steps, then stand still while everyone else moves away from them. Sidestep this mechanic on 1 and plant yourself there until the star makes its way back to Anduin. If hit, you'll be silenced and take near-fatal damage over 4 seconds. These become trickier to manage in Phase 2, and the raid should make sure that in Heroic, these stars do not hit any Grim Reflection adds, as they will heal it and make it immune to CC and interrupts for 5 seconds. Hopebreaker deals a burst of damage on every cast and is a stacking dot that does raid-wide damage every 2 seconds until Anduin reaches 100 willpower. This happens throughout the phase. Make sure the raid is topped off before the cast finishes. Healers will also be busy spot healing any players with Domination Word Pain. This is a 12-second dot. Tanks will be dealing with Dark Zeal from Anduin throughout the phase. This increases his attack speed against his target by 7% per hit. Swap around 12 stacks and before Kingsmourne Hungers. That covers all of Phase 1 mechanics. Let's move on to the first intermission. These intermissions are very important damage phases because of the Force of Will buff that increases our damage, and Domination's Grasp that links the Fallen King ad and Anduin, transferring 100% of damage taken to Anduin. This is why I'm recommending Hero here. Use it when the Fallen King spawns, or the second set of ads, whichever works better for your team. Tanks will need to taunt swap the Fallen King on each cast of Soul Reaper because of the 15-second physical vulnerability it applies. While the Fallen King is active, Remorseless Winter will damage the raid with AoE that increases in damage every 5 seconds. Healers should prepare a healing CD rotation here. If you were unable to restore Anduin's willpower to 100 before entering this phase, it will be much harder and might be a wipe. Fiendish Souls are the first type of ad we see. These leap around at players casting Necrotic Claws. This deals a burst of damage and reduces the effectiveness of healing and absorbs by 5% per stack to anyone in 6 yards. These are easy enough to cleave down. Use some CC to help keep them stacked up for maximum cleave. In Heroic, when this ad dies, it creates a soul explosion, damaging anyone within 4 yards of impact. Be ready to move away from these ads. In Heroic, a second type of ad spawns, Monstrous Souls. This ad's Unraveling Frenzy causes it to lose HP over time, but also increases its damage the lower its HP is. The raid should focus this ad around 30% and burn it before its 6.5 second Necrotic Detonation cast finishes. If the cast goes off, it does raid-wide AoE and reduces healing by 100% for 10 seconds. Now on to Phase 2. All mechanics from Phase 1 are active except for Blasphemy. In its place is Grim Reflections. This spawns 3 ads that cast Psychic Terror. CC 2 of these ads and have the tank drag Anduin to one of them. DPS it down while doing all other Phase 1 mechanics, including Kingsmourne Hungers again. Once an ad is down, the raid should move on to the next one. You will get 2 sets of 3 ads during this phase. Tanks try not to move the boss in this phase until after the Wicked Star has gone out. Moving as it is cast can make it difficult to dodge the stars. The second intermission is the same as the first, with one additional mechanic called March of the Damned. This creates lines of non-attackable ads that march across the platform. Anyone hit is stunned and one-shot. Tanks will need to drag the Fallen King to a safe area, while the raid follows, all while dealing with the other types of ads. If any Grim Reflections were left up, the Fallen King's Dark Presence gives them 500% increased HP and makes them immune to interrupts and CC. Make sure these ads are down before this intermission starts. Finally, we enter Phase 3. We will see Dark Zeal and Wicked Star in this phase, but no longer have Blasphemy or Befouled Barrier. Instead, we have Hopelessness and Beacon of Hope, which are similar. Hopelessness marks all players with black dots that last for 30 seconds. If this dot expires or touches another marked player, it will explode. To remove this dot, the raid needs to dip into the Beacon of Hope barrier 3 to 5 people at a time. When the barrier is used to remove Hopelessness, Purging Light makes the barrier smaller and does raid-wide damage for 3 seconds. It's basically bursting from Mythic Plus, but in a raid setting. Healers will need to use healing CDs in this phase to keep the raid topped while players stagger dipping into the barrier to remove the dot. You have 2 to 3 waves of bombs to get through before the raid will wipe. Healers will also need to time their CDs around Empowered Hopebreaker. This is just like the one from Phases 1 and 2, but with ramped up damage that comes in quick bursts and leaves behind a dot. Timing your clears around this is important because overlapping clears of the dot when this is cast can result in a wipe. The end. Just kidding, here's a TLDR. Phase 1, split groups for Kingsmourne Hungers. DPS or heal the ads in the Sad Realm to restore Anduin's willpower. 2 players with opposing colors must collide to neutralize Blasphemy. No remove equals 1 shot. Touching the same mark equals 1 shot. Stand in the Befouled Barrier so healers can shrink it. Spot heal players with Domination Word Pain. Avoid the Wicked Star on its way out and back in. Tank swap on 12 stacks of Dark Zeal or before Kingsmourne Hungers. Use hero in either intermission. Intermission 1, Anduin and the Fallen King are linked. Do big damage. Tank swap on every stack of Soul Reaper. Cleave ads, in Heroic, nuke Monstrous Souls before Necrotic Detonation explodes. Phase 2, kill the Grim Reflection ads and CC and interrupt their psychic screams. Continue doing Phase 1 mechanics. Intermission 2, same as the first one but with walls of ads. Avoid. Phase 3, use the barrier to remove Hopelessness. It will shrink. No remove equals 1 shot. Touching the same mark equals 1 shot. Try not to overlap clears with Empowered Hopebreaker. I hope you enjoyed this boss guide, and if you did, check out my other videos for the rest of this raid here on my channel. Okay, bye!